What is going on, my passionate Pokemon players? Today we are going to demo our Super Squirtle Squad deck with Blastoise EX as the main attacker here. Now what we're going to do is detail the cards and the reasoning for the deck. I'm going to show you the strategy on how to play it, what the strengths and weaknesses of this deck are, some potential swaps that you can think about inputting there, and then some swaps that I really don't like, right? Be sure to stay tuned for the next video as well. We're going to actually demo and use this deck on TCG Live in the next video. But for this time, we're just going to go through what the deck is, what it looks like, and how you can play it, right? Now, this deck has legal cards from F and on, right? And overall, when I've used this deck, I went to one of my locals with it, only used it one time so far. Had a solid finish. I'm thinking I did like 2-1 or 2-2. But of course, remember, this is not a meta deck. This is a rogue deck. Really fun to play, and it is at least competitive, right? So that's where we're going with this. If you like what you see, make sure to give me a subscribe button so that you can join the Hawks Pokemon nest. If you're not ready to fly yet, just give a little like, and maybe it'll show up in your algorithm, and you can check out some more videos in the future. Alright, so let's go through the Pokemon in the deck. So what does it look like so far? So of course we have 4 of our Squirtles. Now I like the ones from 151. All of the evolutions are going to be from there. And it's because of the attacks, right? Now with Squirtle, I really like this one because of the withdrawal move. Sometimes you get caught in the active spot. You're not quite ready to evolve, especially early on because we don't have a ton of basics here. So withdraw has saved me a few times, right? You're going to flip a coin. If heads, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon. So that way, if your Squirtle gets stuck up there, you've at least got a 50% chance that it's not going to be knocked out, right? So that's why we like Squirtle. I'm going to put all 4 of them for those. Now next up, we've got the Wartortle. This Wartortle as well. This is why I like him. Free diving. Again, you don't want Wartortle on your active spot, but it's going to happen sometimes. And if it happens, then it is good to have free diving, which especially later in the game, you're going to be able to put 3 basic water energies from your discard pile back into your hand. So that can really save you. You don't have to use a superior energy retrieval. You can go ahead and just grab those energies back up, and now you're ready to go. All right. Alright, now of course this is a big turtle here. This is where the deck is going around, is the Blastoise EX. He's got 330 HP, and then he has an ability Solid Shell. Now this makes him take 30 less damage from attacks after applying weaknesses and resistance. So he's got 330 already, and then he's going to be taking 30 less every turn. So sometimes that's going to make him really tough to kill. And we'll talk about later on, we've got a stadium in here that can even reduce his damage further. Right, so that's going to be really good for him. He can sometimes take 3 turns to KO depending on what your opponent is using. Right, and then of course his twin cannons attack. Now this is a really unique attack in many ways. It's going to cost you 2 energy to use, and it deals 140x, right? Which means you're going to discard up to 2 basic water energies from your hand, and it does 140 damage for each card you discarded in this way, right? So if you discard 1 energy, you're going to do 140. If you discard 2 energies, you're going to hit for a big 280. Right? And now we got to think about that because it's 140x, so that means if you don't have any energy to discard in your hand, it's going to do 0 damage. So think about that. It's easy to load up with the 2 energies, only takes a few turns, but you actually need between 3 to 4 energies in your hand to use it for the first time, because you're going to have to discard 1 or 2, and you have to keep energy in your hand at all times. So that's where, you know, it's kind of a double-edged sword. Go more over that later, right? Let's come back over here. We've got Radiant Greninja in here. Just a good draw engine, of course. We're going to be able to discard an energy to draw 2. Kind of keep that in mind. Occasionally you're going to not want to use it. It depends on how much you want to roll the dice. Sometimes you're going to have those 2 energy in hand. If you discard, you're going to cross your fingers you get to draw another energy with those 2, or at least something like an Earthen Vessel or a superior energy retrieval or something around those lines. Night Stretcher in order to get it back. So you kind of have to make those decisions sometimes, but it is good to keep that hand flowing. in a pinch, if you're kind of really in a good spot where you've been loading up your Blastoise with energies, you can start loading your Radiant Greninja up for Moonlight Shuriken. But usually I'm finding I'm not going to be using this move too often because you want to save those energies. So a lot of times you're going to just not be attaching per turn if you don't need to, so that you can keep energies in hand, unless you somehow end up with like 5 or 6 and you're confident in that, right? So there's our Greninja. Then we're going to go with Lumineon V. So I've got 2 of them in my deck. You know, the reason being is, of course, we want to be able to use the Luminous sign so that we're going to pull our supporter card. Usually that supporter card is going to be Irida, almost probably 99% of the time. So this is helping us make sure that we're going to get our Irida so that we can get our item card, and we're going to be able to get our item card and our water Pokemon so that we can make sure we're loading up on either energy or Blastoise's evolutions, Squirtle, Wartortle, or Blastoise, or both of them, of course, right? Alright, so now we've got 2 Pokemon left, and these are going to be a non-water Pokemon, Dunsparce and Dunsparce. So I like Dunsparce in here, and I'm going to go with this one, Find a Friend, in case we get stuck in the active spot, and you're going to be able to get use Find a Friend on it, search your deck for a Pokemon, reveal it, and put it in your hand. So you can either grab yourself a Dunsparce so that next turn you can hopefully retreat him and draw, or you could grab yourself whatever of our Squirtles we need, or shoot, maybe even Radiant Greninja. I've got 2 of each of them in there. Right, the Dunsparce over here with the runaway draw. Once during your turn, draw 3 cards and then shuffle the Pokemon into your deck. So pretty solid draw engine as well to add to the Radiant Greninja. I felt like it really took this deck to the next level and at least made it competitive once I added these in there. I experimented with a few more, like the Bibarel and the Pidgeot. Didn't feel like they worked quite as well as this for some odd reason. So this is nice, and it also helps you not get stuck in the active spot. You know, you may have to sacrifice him sometimes if you can't get one, but people are going to a lot of times want to boss your Dunsparce thinking that it's going to trap you there, and sometimes it does for a turn or two to not use your Blastoise, but then if you can draw into the Dunsparce, you just retreat them and throw your Blastoise right back into the active spot. So good stuff. Alright, so let's go through our trainer cards that are going to be in this deck. First off, we're going to go with the Buddy Buddy Poffin. I'm only playing 3 rather than 4. I find that 3 is oftentimes more than enough, and the reason is because we're focusing on getting Irida, so Irida is helping us draw whatever Pokemon we might need, you know, whether that's a basic or not. So 3 of them usually does the trick, and of course Irida can grab a Buddy Buddy Poffin too, so maybe you're going to grab a Blastoise and a Poffin and throw 2 Squirtles out there. So 3 of them seems to be enough. I thought about 4, but I think we're good. All right, Earthen Vessel. Now this one we do need 4 Earthen Vessels because we need to be able to get energy in hand on demand. We need all 4 of those. A lot of times you're going to use all 4 of them in a match if possible to be able to get your hand with energy. If you've got one of these and at least one other card in hand, you can always make sure that Blastoise is hitting for his big cannon attack. Now, Night Stretcher. Night Stretcher is, I think, another card that took this deck to the next level when it came out. And, you know, I haven't actually been to my local since I've put in this the Night Stretcher in. I used to have Roseanne's backup the last time I used this deck at my local. So I'm actually curious to see how I might do if I were to go Blastoise again there, because this one is just so much better than Roseanne's backup, where the Roseanne's does have the benefit of recycling our stadium that I'll talk about, and the tool. The great thing about Night Stretcher is it's going to give you what you need now. You know, a lot of times you're going to use it because you need that energy back in hand this turn so that you can attack, whereas we don't need it now. The other thing is, if your opponent is strategizing on taking out your Squirtles before you can evolve them into Blastoise, you can get this Night Stretcher, get your Squirtle right back and tell your opponent he's back. And I think that's a really good thing. So Night Stretcher, I'm going to go with 3 of these. I'd like to fit a 4th one. I really want to think about how I can do that because I think they are really valuable. So I may think about swapping in for 4, but for now I think 3 at least does the trick. Right. All right, and then we've got Rare Candy, another one that I've just got 3 of. So almost all of our item cards we're just playing 3, and Rare Candy is no exception. Reason is, again, we have Irida to pull that Rare Candy if we need it. So 3 is usually enough, and oftentimes we're not going to use more than 3 in a match anyway. So, there's that. Of course, you want to have 4 for the consistency and hope of being able to just draw one, but 3 is plenty. Plus, I didn't mention the number of Wartortles, but we do have 2 Wartortles in there, so we don't have to extremely rely on them just to get our Blastoise out. So I'm liking 3. Then Superior Energy Retrieval. This is our other one that we have 4 item cards in there because, again, we need our energy. Just like the Earthen Vessel, we're going to be discarding a ton of energy, sometimes 3 a turn, right? If we're going to use Radiant Greninja, discard 1 to draw 2, and then Blastoise is discarding 2 to deal 280, you're going to be using a lot of these Superior Energies out there. So we need all 4 of those. And a lot of times you can be discarding energies to grab them back, but really important to have those. So Superior Energy. What more is there to say about that one, right? Not a lot. All right, Ultra Ball. I've got 3 Ultra Balls in the deck. Now this is one where maybe we want to think about moving this one out, but I think it's always important to be able to have more options in terms of how we're going to get our Blastoise, how we may even get Radiant Greninja, or other evolutions. We are in there in terms of having a lot of cards that we're discarding that can risk us kind of getting our hands down, with Greninja discarding an energy, with Superior Energy discarding cards, with Earthen Vessel discarding cards, and Ultra Ball is another one of those. But at the same time, it also helps you thin your deck. You're already going to be thinning out when we're using Iridas, which can grab 3, potentially many more cards from the deck. So thinking about thinning even further, and then also just making sure we have more ways of getting our Blastoise out. And sometimes you may use it to get your Dunsparce out there too, for kind of like a draw tool in that turn. So pretty good. 3 of those. All right, and here's our stadium. I've been kind of hinting at it, and maybe some people guessed what it was, or of course you're all hopefully reading the supporters list right here. But this one is a pretty cool stadium, right? And so it's any Pokemon that have a water or a fighting or ground type energy attached. You and your opponents take 20 less damage from attacks. Right? So that means if we've got our Blastoise out there already taking 30 less damage from its ability, you throw a Lake Acuity out there, now he's taking 50 less damage in a turn. And that's pretty ridiculous when it comes down to it. And this is why sometimes you're going to be able to have Blastoise out there where your opponent's taking 3 turns to KO it. I mean, imagine in a Pokemon that's doing 200 damage. This Blastoise has 330 HP. So now that 200 damage is potentially reduced to 150. 3 whole turns to take this bad boy out. In my opinion, it's just a great card. I mean, you do want to think about the fact that we do have more so like the ground fighting types out there nowadays, so your opponent's also going to be able to take advantage of that too. However, with Blastoise's crazy hits, I mean, they're dealing 280 to 330, so let's say they're taking 20 less, 260. Is that much of a difference? Of course, we do see some V-Stars out there still that have 280, but a lot of them, that 20 minus damage isn't going to make a difference between a KO or not. So, in what I've seen is it's pretty good. Right. All right. Now we've got only a few supporters. We actually only have 2 different types of supporters in the whole deck. 3 bosses orders. I mean, you got to play bosses. You just really need to. So we've got 3 of them in there, making sure that we're able to boss up. A lot of times you can get the win. I've done it a lot when they're not able to discard some of those Pokemon that they're using, like for Forest Seal Stones or their Squawkabillies and stuff like that. You can get yourself easy KOs on there, or when they're trying to retreat. So bosses orders, we know what it's used for. Right, and then of course we have Irida, where we're getting our water Pokemon in an item card. I mean, this just makes this deck flow, and a lot of times you can, if you've got Iridas, you can do without drawing. You know, you're able to think about, what do I need? Do I need energy? Do I need rare candy? Getting your Pokemon so that you've got your Blastoises just ready to go. You've got the army of your Turtle Tanks on the bench. So great cards there, right? And for the Ace Spec, I'm going Max Belt. It is kind of tempting to get a Hero's Cape, and I've really thought about it, but I'm not sure I really like it. The Max Belt is really good because 280, right? Thinking about the Blastoise doing 280, and how many Stage 2 Pokemon now are at 330 HP, so that's going to give you just enough to one-shot Charizard EXs and other cards like that. You're able to one-shot a lot of Pokemon with a Max Belt. Make sure you kind of use it when you need it. I try not to equip it until I've got myself in the active spot, especially if I know my opponent has those, so that they don't Lost Vacuum it away, so that you're equipping it the same turn you're using it, so you can be sure you get that KO, right? It is kind of tough sometimes to think about if you know they have an Iono and might Iono it away. So sometimes you kind of want to consider that, but I find just equip that the turn you're going to use it, so that you're knowing that you're able to just one-shot people out there, and then your Blastoise is just annihilating, and sometimes you're going quicker than your opponent can keep up with. Ah, yes, and we can't forget here, Water Energy. Now in this case, I've got 12. 12 energy, because we need a lot of energy in here. As we've noted, you know, we're discarding 2 a turn, sometimes 3 a turn, and the other good thing is when you're drawing, sometimes you're going to want to use those water energy as fodder for earthen vessels, for fodder for other things, that if you know you're going to be able to grab them back, because you don't want to discard really a lot of your Pokemon, right? I mean, we need all of these Squirtles. You can be in a really bad spot if all of your Squirtles are gone, because no one else is attacking, right? You're not relying on Radiant Greninja to do so. Obviously, your Dunsparce aren't attacking, or your Lumineon. So you need these 12 energy to just kind of, as you cycle through draws, being able to have them in hand without having to super rely on your earthen vessels, energy retrievals, and all that good stuff. So that's where we're at with our energies. Alright, so now let's talk about strategy. This is one of the more straightforward decks out there. Blast with Big Turtle. I mean, that's the strategy of it, right? You want to balance out having enough energy in hand with also having another Blastoise ready to go. Right? So that means there are going to be a lot of turns where you're not attaching per turn, because you do want to focus. What I've found is getting the knockouts, right? If it means that you have to wait a turn or two to attach an energy to that Blastoise EX on your bench, then go do that. You know, get the knockout, prioritize that, because a lot of times, remember, you're going to be grabbing a prize card or two to get another energy, whereas your opponent might pull some tomfoolery if you're just going to either not attack or hit for 140. So I mean, that's a big strategy. Balance out having enough energy in your hand with that. Use Irida to get what's missing, right? And use those Lumineon Vs to grab that too. You know, the Lumineons can be a little crappy card on your bench that can be an easy 2 prizes for your opponent, but they're also going to waste the bosses or a counter catcher or whatever on getting that Lumineon out there, and you're going to be able to place that Lumineon, grab an Irida from your deck, and get the cards you need. So you almost have like a way of getting 6 Irida because of the Lumineons, and we want to do that, right? We could get Rare Candy, Earthen Vessel, Squirtle, Wartortle, Blastoise, Radiant Greninja, Poffins, whatever. Anything we want with Irida, basically, from the deck, so we're going to go that route, right? Now, Blastoise is a tank if you get that Stadium. The downside is there's no real consistent way of pulling that Stadium. So I've kind of thought about that, and there's not a lot of good ways to get it. So you don't have to necessarily rely on it, but I mean, if you can get that Lake Acuity out there and your Blastoise is taking 50 less damage, you're in a good spot. Also consider it too, like if you have that Stadium out there and you do have those extra energies, remember that your Lumineon, even your Dunsparce into Dunsparce, if they don't have to be water type, they just need an energy attached and they're going to take 20 less damage. So you can kind of use that to consider that if you want to maybe keep your Luminions alive if they get bossed up from one hit and things of that nature. Then you can retreat them with that energy. Luminion, you just need the one. The next turn, if they didn't die, and throw Blastoise back out there, right? Now remember that Dunsparce is a great draw engine to have, but we're not really focused on getting him out. You do want to focus on getting your Radiant Greninja out, but from what I see, the Dunsparce and the Dunsparce are just kind of like bonuses. They're really nice bonus cards to have out there. They tend to come in clutch, kind of right when you need them. So don't focus on getting them out. Don't waste resources on getting them out. But you're going to be able to use them when needed. All right, in terms of strengths, again, pretty straightforward. The deck hits hard. Blastoise hits hard. It's relatively easy to prep in terms of not having to wait a lot of turns to attack if you can get the energies in hand. And we only need 2 of them. 2 energies and you're hitting for 280 is pretty ridiculous in terms of attach. So you're able to also, if you've got your one in the active spot, you're already loading up your next one that's on the bench. Really good in that regards, right? And he can take hits. Remember that you need the 1 or 2 in hand to discard. You also have pretty decent draw power. You're going to see a lot of my decks lack draw power, but this one has pretty good. There's a lot of options. There's a lot of thinning options that are going to help you as well with your earthen vessels and things like that to thin that deck out so that you're also drawing what you need. So even late in the game, if your hand's getting shuffled or at really any point, then you're hopefully still drawing the cards that you need to get there, right? Night Stretcher is a really good strength to this deck. Gives you that versatility of grabbing either an energy to attack or the Pokemon that either you had to discard or that was KO'd, getting directly back to your hand, right? And then 12 energy gives you enough to use them as fodder when you're needing to discard stuff for things like your superior energy retrieval, and you're going to have enough in discard to where even if you use your superior energy retrieval, discarding 2 from hand, you're a lot of times going to already have 4 or more in your discard because of Greninja and your Blastoise's attacks. All right, so good stuff there. Now, what about weaknesses? It's straightforwardness is again a double-edged sword. Your opponent is easily going to tell what we're doing, right? We've got Blastoise attacking, and that's it. If they realize and they have the cards in their deck to really hinder and hamper your hand, that's going to be an issue for you. That's really what the biggest issue is using things like Ionos, especially after you've taken 2 to 3 prize cards. That's going to be an issue where they're using Iono and getting you down to even 3 and 4. If you don't have that energy in hand because of that, can be a big issue. So that's a big thing. The other thing is we don't have bench protection here. It's another thing. I'm usually, it's against my style to play these bench protector cards. Occasionally I will, but I just don't see it as super necessary and kind of a waste of a bench, especially when we want to have Greninjas, we want to have Dunsparce on our bench, and then Squirtles. So there's really no room for bench protection there. But if your opponent figures out how to take advantage of that, especially with cards like Dragapult and such, then it can be an issue if they're KOing your Squirtles faster than you can evolve them. That's a big strategy that can really just shut this deck down because that's our only attacker, and it's a stage 2 attacker, which means it can take you a little bit of time to get that one up. All right, and then from there, we're thinking about Greninja. If that Radiant Greninja is prized, it can slow the deck down. Now remember, we do have the Dunsparce and the Dunsparce, but it is really tough to reliably get them out. You do have those 3 Poffins, and you do have an Ultra Ball, but then once they're shuffled back in, it's a 1-turn draw and that's it. So it's really hard to rely on them as consistent draw power. So if you do get them prized, then it can be a challenge in that regards, right? and even sometimes when you do have them out there, it's a gamble. Fortune favors the bold, so I'm usually going to take that gamble. But sometimes if you have 2 energy in hand and you need both of them to get the knockout, do you want to take a chance and use concealed cards, hoping that you're going to draw something that's either going to be an energy or be able to get you an energy back in hand? You really want to think about that as well, and it can hinder you. The fact that your draw engine is also discarding valuable energy from hand. Right. Another thing, no switch cards. It's another deck where I'm not using switch cards because I find, again, usually it's not too necessary. Like, sometimes your opponent might be like, oh, Blastoise EX, he's got 3 retreat costs, I'm going to boss him up. But then they're like, oh, shoot, he's really easy to get and he takes turns to kill. If they boss him up, they're going to hit him. He's not going to die turn 1. He might not even die turn 2. So even if it means you're going to load him up in 2 turns, he's usually going to knock your opponent out. What I find is opponents are usually trying to get Blastoise out of the active spot. So they're going to be bossing up my Dunsparce or my Radiant Greninjas, and then trying to knock them out there. Right. So if they knock out the Radiant Greninja, you're going to want to use a Night Stretcher to get him back. Sometimes they also just try to leave my Dunsparce inactive, and then I'm just going to cross my fingers. I draw the Dunsparce. And really, if they want to slow this deck down, that's fine. This deck is perfectly fine slow playing and getting it out, because then we're able to get more cards in hand. We're able to load up our bench. So if they want to just have a Dunsparce sit in the active spot for a few turns, you go right ahead and take that. Load up your Blastoise, and if they want to knock him out, cool. They wasted an attack where you're loading up your Blastoise, so it makes it kind of cool. Alright, so let's go through some of the other card considerations that I've considered for here. Now, one thing, this deck originally had a Palkia V and Palkia V-Star in there, right? And the Star Portal V-Star just seems like a really good fit for this deck, considering there's always going to be cards in the discard, so we're able to use that ability and grab 3 energies and throw them on your Pokemon in any way you like. So really comes in a pinch, but it's not really necessary. The deck does better without it, with other cards like your Superior Energies, your Night Stretchers, and kind of just waste bench spots. And people really like to target these cards for the one shot for 2 prize cards, right? So it doesn't really work too well for me. Now, one that I've considered over Dunsparce, and the Dunsparce would be the Kingdra from Lost Origins, right? Because it does have that Seething Currents ability, which lets you shuffle your hand at the bottom of the deck and draw 4 cards. You could have your opponent do that too, but really the point of this is obviously for you to be able to draw. So it gives you the consistency of keeping it on your bench, being able to do this every turn, and always have at least 4 cards. So that's actually going to do really well for like end of game and help you prevent things like getting Iono'd or Roxanne or Unfair Stamp late in the game. However, the downside is you have to shuffle. So sometimes you're going to want what's in your hand, and it can be a gamble to get rid of your hand and draw again. And then the other thing is that this is a stage 2, right? So we're going to probably not have room for the Kingdra in there, or a Seadra, sorry. So it means that you need another rare candy, right? Remember, we're only playing 3 rare candies as it is. So to have to use one on getting this one out there can be an issue. But it is something to consider. Maybe if you can reorganize some other cards, like potentially removing an Ultra Ball could help, because now you're able to grab this with Irida. Remember, they're water types. So it's something to consider. I may try it out. I've never actually tried it to see how it works. So I might give it a shot when we're doing some of the demos and kind of see how we like it, right? Now this one, here's an odd one right here, Relicanth. Now the Relicanth has some potential here for a few reasons to use in combination with Blastoise. And the reason is we've got Memory Dive. It's an ability that I really like and think that there's more use for it, I think, than what a lot of us are getting out of the game right now, right? So each of your evolved Pokemon can use any attack from its previous evolutions, right? And remember that we've got some pretty good abilities with our with our Squirtles and our Wartortles, right? Let's say that you've got this Relicanth on your bench, and you've got your Blastoise in the active. It's got its 2 energies loaded up, but you're out of energies in hand. Well, guess what? If you want to use your Squirtle and you rare candied it up, you can use Withdraw. And Withdraw is going to give you a 50% chance of preventing all damage on that Blastoise. That is pretty good. Or if you didn't rare candy it up, you can also use Free Diving. So with the Blastoise using Free Diving, you're going to grab 3 energies back in hand and be good to go for next turn. Cross your fingers your Blastoise doesn't get knocked out. But at the very worst, you've got 3 energies in hand, right? And rather than doing nothing, that's our biggest thing, is if we've got no energy in hand with Blastoise, it's not doing anything. So the ability to use those previous evolutions attacks can help us. And I think even... if I remember right, that Squirtle, the Wartortle, can hit for 50, right? Yeah, I know. All right, so let me have a look at that, right? So 2 energy spinning attack can do 50. Let's say we want to use spinning attack. You can do some calculations in head. Okay, I'm going to do 50, and then next turn, maybe it's a Pokemon with 330 HP. Next turn, you're going to cross your fingers. You deal that other 280, and now it is knocked out. So it gives you some options. It may be really tough to work in because of that. Oh, I don't think I even saved the deck. That's unfortunate. So we're going to cut, and we're going to bring our deck back up. All right, actually, we didn't need to cut, but that's okay, right? I just didn't rename it. All right, so let's talk about trainers in here, right? What are some potential other trainers to consider in there? Actually, nothing. No, I'm just playing. Okay, so we've got Roseanne's backup. It's something to consider. Again, I found that it was much better without, but you are able to recycle the stadiums, and you're able to recycle the Pokemon tool, so it can help you if you are going with your maximum belt. You can recycle that one back into your deck. You can get your stadiums back, and you can do all 4 of these, right? The downside, what I see, is you oftentimes, like I've said, need that in hand at all times, right? So that's an option instead of Night Stretcher. Now, another trainer that I would like to incorporate, but can't think of a way yet how, I've got to think on it, is the Kieran, right? Switch your active Pokemon with one of your benched. Probably not going to use that one, but to have it as an option, let's say your Blastoise does get trapped in the active and you've got one ready to go on your bench, or any other Pokemon, it's a switch card. But really what I really like this for is the second option. During this turn, attacks used by your Pokemon do 30 more damage to opponent's active EX and Vs, right? So now we can deal even more damage to them if we're going to use that, right? Blastoise can now hit for 310. If it's got a max belt, 360. Is that necessary? I don't know. But hey, let's do it. We do see some Pokemon that are up to 340 HP. It also could potentially help you not have to use 2 energies, right? It's occasionally we are seeing some Pokemon with, maybe it's a non-EX or a V, and it's got 150, 160 or so. You're going to be able to one-shot it with that and not have to discard 2 energy. So I do like this card. It is a trainer, again, and we don't have too many other trainers in there. So I'd like to figure out a way to incorporate it and think about what to go from there, right? Okay, Ace Specs. The Hero's Cape is a really tempting one to go. Get that Blastoise to 430 HP. Thinking about it taking 50 less damage. Shoot, that can potentially then last so many turns. Let's say it's taking 150 damage. 430 isn't going to help it get to 4 turns before it's knocked out. So, but you can get to 430, and that's really the reason why. Between 330 to 430 HP. I'm not finding, especially when we're taking 50 less, I'm not finding that it's going to give us survivability for one more turn. So this is why I like the max belt a lot more, because we're able to knock out, we don't need the survivability. We're already taking a lot less damage. All right. Okay, secret box, another good one to think about, considering we're going to discard 3 cards from hand and then search for item, tool, supporter, stadium. It's going to give us everything we need to get our Blastoise ready to go, right? We can get our max belt, we can get, whatever we need, rare candy, earthen vessel, energy retrieval or whatever, superior, and then our stadium, and get him ready to go. All right, so that's an interesting one to think about. Now this one, you've got to be a little bit crazy to want to use it. However, it's an item card, so we can draw it with Irida, and then we can heal 150 damage from your Pokemon, right? So rather than a Hero's Cape, it's a one-time use, and we're going to heal 150 from our Blastoise. It's pretty crazy, if you ask me. So that can make him potentially last 4 turns out there, and you can pull it pretty easily. So Pokevital A is one. If you're want to do something out there, I would try it out. I don't know if I personally would want to go with it, but it's an interesting one to think about in there, right? Alright, so let's go over some suggestions that I do not like. One of the most common tips that I get, or suggestions I get for changing this deck, is getting some bench damage prevention, right? Like with Manaphy. Now, it just doesn't work for me, and here's why, right? My goal for this deck is I want to get it loaded up as quickly as possible with Radiant Greninja, 2 Squirtles or their evolutions, and 2 Dunsparce. Right, so where does that leave room for Manaphy? It doesn't. It doesn't leave room for Manaphy. And then on the other end too, I think it's pretty easy to get to the point where we can get our Squirtle evolved quickly enough to where we don't have to worry about him getting KO'd on the bench. So kind of thinking about that, we've got Iridan, we've got other ways to evolve him, especially with the Wartortle. If we do have a Wartortle on bench for a couple turns, then that's okay. Usually, it's going to take him two turns to knock him out usually. So thinking about it in that regards is pretty good. So Manaphy, not really necessary, not really worth the space in the deck. It's really, in my opinion, better to go the other route, right? Lost Vacuum, it's just a card I have a vendetta against in many ways. I don't like Lost Zone decks. I don't use them. I've never built one. I almost did. I did order some comfies online and never used them, just to kind of actually play from home. This was before I was really doing a lot of TCG live stuff. But anyway, Lost Zone, the only really reason I see this as useful is to get rid of a Hero's Cape on your opponent. So it's just so situational. I don't think that we want to put in a Lost Vacuum. Of course there are other tools to discard, potentially even stadiums that might be messing with you. But I don't see a use for the Lost Vacuum. It's just taking up deck space. No. All right, and then we're thinking about energy, fewer energies. Right? Do we want any less energies in the deck? Because we do have 12, which is pretty high by today's standards in a lot of ways. But no, not a big fan of that. We need all of those 12 energies. As I mentioned earlier, we're sometimes discarding 3 in a turn between Greninja and Blastoise's attacks. We want to make sure that it's easy, or at least we have a higher chance of top decking energies when we need them, 12, and just also having the ability to discard without, relying too much on our retrievals and things of that nature. So, in my opinion, you need to stick with those 12 energies. So, that's mostly it from where we're at there. All right, so overall, this is the deck. This is where we're at. It's really actually, if you watch my Charizard EX deck demo, then it's actually a little bit more playable than it. And I think we may do better when we're looking at our next video. Make sure to stay tuned for where we're actually playing this deck on TCG Live. Right, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good deck. It's maybe a little bit less flexible than that Charizard, Oops All Charizard deck, but it's pretty playable, pretty solid in terms of pretty straightforward and easy to play. If you're really just coming into the game and want something easy to pick up, this is a pretty solid deck for you. You do have to think about your hand and making sure you have enough in there. So it's a little bit different than a lot of decks play, but I think pretty easy in that regards, right? So be sure to stay tuned for more. You know, like I said, our next video, we're going to be demoing on TCG Live this Blastoise deck. But then after that, we're going to finish off our videos of decks using our original 3 starter Pokemon. We're going to have a Venusaur EX deck from there. So we'll do the same thing. We're going to show you what that Venusaur one looks like, and then I'll have another video where I demo that deck on TCG Live. So be sure, again, if you liked what you saw here, hit that subscribe button so you can see more demos of Rogue decks. We're going to also be doing pretty soon some unboxings. We've got new sets coming out. We're going to get some booster boxes of those and see if I get any pulls that are better than that Charizard Super Premium Box pulls, for those of you that checked out that video. But come back if you're not ready to fly in the Hawk's Nest yet. Just hit the like button. Comment what you thought. You know, what do we see in here? Is there anything that I missed to improve this deck? What do you like? What do you not like? Give me some suggestions for changes in there, and maybe we'll throw them on there. So good stuff, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next time.